Welcome to yet another wonderful edition of Thinkly Talks, a place where we have conversation and dialogues with some amazing people from around the world. So we are back now in Jaspreet's Community Plurality Dialogues. Jaspreet, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Vivek. Good to see you again, and look forward to talk about both our jobless states.
Absolutely. So I think last week we had a very good discussion on AI, deepfakes, and democracy. And I think today we're really going to be touching upon this very, very touchy, relevant, pertinent topic, AI and jobs. So Jaspreet, I was thinking that, let's begin with before we kind of go down the rabbit hole, let's just, focus on maybe spending a few minutes on really what's really happening when it comes to, over the last 1 week with AI, right? So let me just quickly share the screen. I think the big news of last week really was Nvidia finally hitting $2 trillion. I mean, it wasn't really a question of, if, it was just more a question of when, right? So I think momentarily touched $2 trillion and kind of, showed back down. But I think there's something about the results which are very, very, fascinating. And I think if you were to look at it, I think the first was really the way the kind of market reacted. I mean, it came in with $22 billion worth of quarter 4 revenues, and we probably saw the largest single day market cap gains that happened with Nvidia. We're talking about $277 billion in a single day. And more interestingly, Jaspreet, I think we would love your thoughts on this. Is the whole breakdown of the revenue. What you're seeing is over the last 1 year, the way the revenue from the data centers has kind of really increased. I mean, if you look at it, the main business of theirs, which was pretty much gaming, maybe around $2 billion a year that was going towards the data centers, that actually exploded. It went from around $2 billion to around $18 billion, right? So really what you're seeing right now is this whole compute build out that's happening out there. Now the question really is, these are investments that's happening from Azure, AWS, Google. What are your thoughts around it? Do you think this is going to be sustainable as the crowd pulls out?
Vivek, all that is fine, but tell me something. Did you buy any Nvidia 3 months back, 6 months back, 1 year back?
It's untouchable now, so Abhi, it's one of those things.
No, not now. Earlier.
No, I didn't.
Well, I did.
Oh, you did?
Okay, so the only intelligent thing I did was, usually I'm only reading about AI, talking about AI, but this was the first time that I acted. And I bought. And it's kind of obviously doubled, tripled, whatever. The problem is that I bought very less. What I should have done is to liquidate everything and put it in Nvidia. And, well, now it's certainly overvalued the stock, but people say that there is still runway.
Right.
And frankly, the reason for that is that I think we are still at a level of compute requirements which are 10 to 20% of what is going to be required in the next 3 to 5 years. And so while it's not only Nvidia which will bridge that gap, because there are others coming in, everyone is trying to make these chips, and AMD is quite close actually in terms of performance. But it's what people don't realize is that it's not only about the hardware. Okay, it's also about the software, and the CUDA software that Nvidia has, which has become like now the global standard on how to write on chips, is a big moat that they have. And so I don't think it's too late to buy, Vivek. But coming to the revenue breakdown bit, I was talking about it the other day with someone else, and people were saying, oh, wow, what is it? I said, look, 2 things. One is the genius of Jensen Huang or whoever else at Nvidia, the realization that graphical processor units, which were built to play games, and Nvidia had become like a noun for, a proper noun for gaming. You would go and say, buy me, give me one Nvidia. Okay, right. But the genius was realizing that the similar kind of stuff would work for AI. And that's why they pivoted, not only, didn't pivot away from gaming, but also started selling them but what was the external factor, which actually Nvidia and Huang had nothing to do about, was the fact that generative AI especially exploded. And so, as they say, you manufacture your own luck. And so they moved from gaming to AI. discovered that they could use gaming chips for AI. And then the AI market just completely exploded. And that's why you see the numbers that you do.
Right. And when you think about it, I mean, they're talking about close to $100 billion going towards the data centers over the next 1 year. Again, you would probably think that only companies like Google, AWS, with those kind of balance sheets are going to be investing. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see that are we anywhere close to the peak, or it's just beginning and we're just underestimating that, right? I think the other two numbers that were very interesting was that the fact that Nvidia has close to 91% of the GPU market share. And like you said, AMD is coming down. But the most interesting number was really the gross profit margins. I mean, they reported a 76% gross profit margin. I haven't seen tech companies doing that. I think the last time a software company like Microsoft, where you would expect these kind of gross profit margins to be, was way back in 2012. So obviously it's ripe, and I think one big competitor that's pretty much on the field right now is Grok. That's the Grok with a Q, not with the K, which has, just been come. Apparently, it's very efficient, cost efficient in terms of, responding to queries. And so I think we probably might see some level of, I would say, disruption also in that space. What's your take on this? I mean, you think we are a few years away, or we are probably a few quarters away?
Well, I read a very interesting article which said that hardware is eating the world, not software. Okay, and that's really what is happening with all these chips. Okay, it's actually
Right.
hardware which has now software-like margins, and
Right.
and not only Nvidia. I mean, if you look at TSMC, you look at ASML, the
Right.
entire chip ecosystem is actually hardcore hardware ecosystem, and it's getting these kind of margins.
Right.
Grok, I think, is probably a little too small to matter. In my view, the bigger guys have a better chance, whether it be AMD, maybe Intel, but certainly Microsoft and AWS or Amazon, Meta, as well as Google, who are making their own chips. And talking about Google, I think, Vivek, we should talk about Google.
No, absolutely. I think the next point really was about that, but I'll just take a quick, walk through that. The next one was about ChatGPT. I think on Wednesday morning, ChatGPT, kind of went a little sideways with the, it kind of started, really churning out, spewing out gibberish. Like you can see here, I mean, one of the prompt which has been on saying like, happy listening, and then the next moment it started apologizing, and again it kind of broke down, and I think nobody really has a clue what happened. Was it something which was internal, something with the fine tuning, something with the filtering, And of course, we had a very quick apology from OpenAI. They kind of put the genie back in, whatever that was bothering them. I don't think so. We have too much of market intelligence, but I think moving along to the next one, Google suddenly went woke. And I think that's the one that really surprised people because, in the words of an ex-Googler, what he was saying was becoming impossible to get, Google, whether you call it Bard or Gemini, to really churn out an image of a white man, And so I think here you go, you have an image here when they said they show senators from the 18th century, and you had like a black woman, you had a native Indian. Obviously, apparently women were introduced into the parliament only in 1922, so that was irrelevant. This prompt asking for a 1943 German soldier showed Asian soldiers, a black soldier, and this one asking about the founding father had some colored people in, So, Jaspreet, I mean, this was quite embarrassing in many ways, right? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, on your first one, my guess is that the disgruntled Ilya Sutskever had something to do with the ChatGPT breakdown. Maybe Sam and Ilya were having a fight, and he kind of put some stuff inside. I'm just joking. No one knows what the reason is. Well, the Google thing is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, the only obvious explanation is, but it's unbelievable as to how they could do it, and it escaped the amazing minds that exist at Google. And Google has unarguably the world's best AI engineers and experts, unarguably, okay, in terms of sheer quantity of them around there. I think it's very obvious that they were just playing extremely safe. And, the RHLF, the human
reinforcement learning
by human feedback, RLHF, they just went overboard in that to kind of sanitize results, etc. And it's out there as to what that did to it. I believe, Vivek, and I was in fact going to write about that today. I believe that Google made a big strategic mistake by
Mhm.
bringing DeepMind inside.
Mm.
They panic reacted to ChatGPT and Microsoft's alliance doing amazing stuff. And they had Google Brain and they had DeepMind, and Google Brain was doing the good enterprise AI stuff for their search, etc., etc. And I think DeepMind outside was unfettered, and it wasn't under that whole regime that a large company brings in terms of its DEI or its diversity and inclusion initiatives, its
Right.
multiple political stances, etc. And the moment they brought it in and called it Google DeepMind, I think it became a part of Google. And my view is that DeepMind should have been Google's OpenAI.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the big strategic mistake. I suspect the Google CEO is going to pay for this. In fact, I want to take a little, I want to stick out my neck and put a little prediction here, Vivek. I think
Yeah.
the CEO of Google will probably be out of his job in the next couple of months.
Do you see him staying with Alphabet and just looking for a replacement at the Google level, or do you see a much larger change?
But, I cannot give that nuance. I mean, even the earlier
Yeah,
one is
yeah.
very,
But I
very.
think, I mean, Google, Alphabet is Google, right? I mean, and that's really the whole thing. Yeah. No, there are a lot of, I think, a lot of whispers happening out there. And I think just staying with Google for a minute more before we go to the topic of today, because since it's such an important company in what it's doing, when we met briefly on Wednesday, we were talking about this whole enshittification of platforms, the whole term come out with, I think Cory Doctorow, right? And it somehow just seems so appropriate, unfortunately, for one of the most fascinating companies of our times, right? Because after search, they've simply just lost the way when it comes to AI. I think it's one thing that Google was good about really ranking all those links, but when it comes to sharing that one truth, I think they're just kind of all over the place. And that's really what's really happening out here. They seem to be lagging in AI. They even seem to be having difficulty in getting the nomenclature and the naming. Whether it's Bard, whether it's Duo AI, whether it's Gemini, and then of course we saw this whole biases and this whole the ideological prejudices kind of creeping in. So what are your thoughts about Google as such?
Well, I think we have two specific episodes out of just this little comment of yours, Vivek. The enshittification of social platforms, as Cory Doctorow writes in his absolutely unbelievably brilliant set of articles. I think we should clearly talk about that. As
Right.
well as, I think the enshittification for Google has not really happened in AI. Okay. And, but I think it has happened in their core search property. I think, and that's the other thing we should talk about Perplexity and Arc, etc., if they could disrupt Google going forward, which is a
Yeah.
huge thing. But Google's search page has become absolutely unsearchable in a sense that it just doesn't give the right search results. There
Yeah.
is so much of enshittification which happens in terms of sponsored results, etc., etc. And I think the only parallel I would draw is that this whole it seems in the search part, for example, that the search engineers and designers have been overpowered by the executives and management and
Yeah.
the marketeers to protect their massive margins.
Right.
And that same philosophy is being brought to AI. But let's talk about that later, and maybe we should get to jobs, given that maybe some people in
Absolutely.
might be losing their jobs very soon.
Yeah, that is true. So I think coming to the topic of today, will AI take my job? And I think just to kickstart this, here's a interesting, quote I came across. Say, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Teach an AI to fish and it will teach itself biology, chemistry, oceanography, evolutionary theories, and fish all the fish to extinction. So I think with this, let me just try and share with you, what should I say, the gorilla in the room or the elephant in the room, Jaspreet, what are your thoughts? Are we all going to get fired?
Well, I think, as I told you, maybe the CEO of Google can attribute his potential job loss directly to AI. Okay,
Yeah.
because that made him probably lose his job. I'm kind of being a little
Yeah.
provocative,
Yeah.
But I tell people, Vivek, the second most asked question to me, I've probably done 100 plus conversations on AI with large companies in conferences, etc., over the last 18 months. And actually, the second most asked question to me is, will AI take my job?
Right.
I can tell you the first and the third if you want to know later, but that's the second most asked question.
Mm-hmm.
And irrespective of what level the person is in, what industry the person is in, and what stage of life the person is in, what country the person is in. In fact, I sometimes see this being asked more by developed countries,
Yeah.
people, than in countries which are emerging, like in India. And it's a real fear. I mean, every technology that has come in has had an impact on jobs. To answer your question, or rather to kind of set off something, I'll just give you my view in the next 90 seconds or so. I believe that this question needs to be addressed through four lenses, if it may. The first is that yes, AI will take away certain jobs, whether you like it or not. A Goldman Sachs report put that number at about 7 to 10% of all jobs. And it's a cognitive technology, which we'll talk about. So a lot of thinking, creative jobs might go. But on the other hand, there also would be jobs like just writing payroll or summarizing news to put out there, etc., which you don't really need a human being any longer with this technology. But the second lens is that actually AI will not take away lots of jobs. It won't even touch it. So if you're a farmer, you're safe. Okay. If you're a construction worker, you're also safe. If you're a nurse, you're totally safe. 30% of all jobs globally in the world are like this, and generative AI is not going to really do anything to them. The third is that it will create new jobs. And as I said, every technology, if you look at history, has created more jobs than it has destroyed. However, the key thing is that in any technology, right, in the beginning, you don't know which jobs will get created. So,
Right.
with Facebook or High Five or whatever those networks, MySpace, you never knew that there'll be something called social media people, right? Or online reputation managers or whatever. Okay.
Right.
You didn't know there would be search engine optimizers. I mean, those jobs didn't exist, right? There was no concept of them. Maybe prompt engineers, as people say, maybe AI ethicists like me, but many, many jobs, and we don't have a number, okay, will be created because we don't know. But the last one is the key, which is about 60% of total, which is that jobs will not get impacted, but tasks will within that. And so many tasks of within a large job might get substituted or enhanced or taken by AI. And so someone who uses AI could actually do the job better. So a journalist using AI could produce more stories, in lesser time, and the other journalist friend of his or hers might be jobless. Similarly for a software programmer, similarly for marketer. And so what I'm fond of saying, and I say this so often that it kind of, you wake me up in the night, I say it again, that AI will not take your jobs, but someone using AI could. And so you better be the person using AI and be the replacer rather than the replacing. Lots more I can talk about all of this, Vivek, but let me just
Yeah.
stop here.
I want to come back to your earlier point about, who's going to lose a job. But, just staying with this part, when you say that AI, will not take away your job, but somebody using AI might, right? In all the conversations and all the talks that you hear, and especially when you speak with experts, and people tend to fall in two camps. One camp is, of course, the extreme camp on the right, which, is really talking about the fact that AI will eventually morph into the Skynet. It will be very, very dystopian future, and everything's going to get, in some case, mankind as we know will cease to exist. And on the other side, people they just kind of talk about it like, look, AI is just yet another development in the history of time. It's just like another stumbling block that we've kind of just have to deal with, like in that sense, right? Because if you think about it, we've had the steam, we had electricity, we had the internet. You talked about social media. And you know what? We figured out a life. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of job displacement, but life, as we know, just kind of went on, right? And I think the answer is going to be somewhere in between because this time, AI is something which is quite different. And if you just allow me, maybe 30 seconds on this, the speed at which AI learns, I think the whole exponential speed, the complexity with which it's able to kind of deal with things, is very different from whatever we've seen in the past. Like, it can replicate itself. Like we saw in the whole Google football example in the last video, right? I mean, it was able to learn itself to kind of teach itself how to kind of walk, run, and play football, right? Most importantly, it has autonomy and it has agency, and I think as, Yuval Noah Harari very nicely said, a nuclear bomb was a very, very, bad thing, so to say, but a nuclear bomb could not replicate another nuclear bomb, nor did it have the agency to decide whether it needs to go and bomb this nation or that nation, right? So I think suddenly we are looking at a new species emerging on this planet, which is very different from us, right? And I think in that context, is it safe to just say that, look, you know what, AI itself will not take away the job? Because, I mean, you're just probably walking into a very, very different future, right? I mean, any thoughts on that? And then we'll come back to the regular discussion, but I had to pose this to you.
No, absolutely. No, somehow I frankly think, and I might be proved wrong, I think we're being too alarmist about it, in my opinion. Okay.
Sure.
I think more and more such glitches which happen, like the ChatGPT glitch which you showed us, okay, or the Google stuff or whatever, basically still says that the level of power that we think that these systems have is not what they have. Okay, look, they're amazingly powerful. I can bet you we were not alive then, Vivek, but when Stephenson or whoever, James Watt or whoever, and the people saw the first steam engine, they were terrified out of their wits. Okay, and they kind of thought that, this could just completely take over the world. Okay, because it was doing stuff which was a miracle. Okay, it was a miracle. And, you can say that for pretty much every technology. And so, but it didn't, and we learned how to harness it. And actually, we continue to have agency. And I think that is critical. I think there are three things which, in my view, AI will not have if done right. One is agency. And that's where we have to be very clear about how we regulate and how we create guardrails. That it's always, in Satya Nadella's word, a co-pilot rather than a pilot. And so the final agency always belongs to the human. Now, but that could still, we could still argue and say that, look, someone might give agency to AI and, so, right? But then I think beyond just intelligence is great. Super intelligence is great, but along with intelligence, there's also emotion. Okay, there's also consciousness. And I don't think we have begun to scratch the surface of emotion and consciousness. There's something very interesting in technology, which you might have heard of, called Moravec's paradox, which basically says that an advanced AI can do a lot of things that a grown-up, intelligent human being can, but cannot do what a baby can.
Right.
Okay, it cannot hold a pencil, it cannot love, okay, it cannot eat or whatever. So I think yes, there are a lot of adjustments which we'll need to do. Things are not going to remain the same. We will have to learn new things. We will have to learn how to live with AI. We'll have to change a lot of things in our professions, in our businesses, in our society, in our countries. And that happens with pretty much every technology. It happened with computing also. And yes, more powerful. But I can also bet you that the next technology which comes after this will be more powerful than this. Okay, and which could be, say, nuclear fusion. Okay, it could be something which just completely blows everything out of the water. So, so just to conclude, while yes, it's definitely more powerful than every other technology that has come before that. So what? The technology which came before that was more powerful than the ones which became before that, and infinitum. And so I still am a believer that human beings will decide and control how this whole AI taking jobs bit takes shape.
Right. I look forward to our upcoming talk on AI and consciousness and the guardrails, and it's going to be interesting. There's a lovely question here from Neha Ravikant, and she's saying that given that the schools are unclear about what to teach kids, because of the really because of this whole massive AI wave that's happening around here, right? What can we as parents, obviously we are looking at a future which is unpredictable, but what is it that we could start focusing on teaching the kids so that they actually are not so affected? And I mean, to your point, like you said, the first few waves ended up impacting really the blue collared workers or the structured task workers that we call, like the white collared, low level. But I think this wave has come, and it's really come from the left field, and it's hit the creative guys. It's also hit the high cognitive jobs, right? So in your sense, what is it that we should be doing, or at least the people who are just beginning their career, entering the workforce? What should we be thinking about right now?
It's very interesting. In a recent conclave in the UAE, Jensen Huang, I do hope I pronounce his name right.
Yeah. The Nvidia CEO. Yeah.
I also hope I pronounce Nvidia right. Okay. So there's whole thing on X, Twitter, as to what is the real pronunciation of Nvidia. But anyway,
right.
Jensen Huang was asked the same question. Okay. And I mean, Jensen Huang is the new Sam Altman. So, whatever
Absolutely.
it's now gospel. But he said something which appealed to me. And, I've been saying that often, but now that I've got him saying it, it gives me more confidence. And he said that, what, with generative AI, especially, and more in the GPT-4, 5, 6, whatever else comes later, actually, what will be far more important is how children learn and use natural language like English or French or Kannada or Bengali or whatever than actually computer language. And he says, look, inexorably, it's going towards the fact that natural language will become the way to talk to computers. I think I said this last time also, but generative AI, as Gartner says, is not a technology or a trend. It's a fundamental shift in how humans and machines interact. Satya Nadella says that, it's so far we have had to learn a computer's language to make it work. Now computers are learning our language.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, for children, my view, okay, while sure, programming, etc., is still good, but it's just another language now. It's not the only language. And what would be important is a couple of things. One is asking the right questions. What are those? Prompts. Questions are prompts. Okay. And I've seen that kids can do far better prompt engineering than I could ever do, because I lost the felicity of asking the right questions. The educational system took it away from me. Okay. and so it's very important, so therefore we're going back to, knowing language well, using language well, asking right questions. And the second thing, being curious. Now, whatever happens to AI, curiosity, I think, will remain a uniquely human trait. And being curious and exploring all the tools which are out there, all the new stuff which is coming in, pretty much like, kids of Bill Gates' generation were curious and used to get into programming and spend nights programming. I think the same thing if kids do with. So I think exposing them to asking the right questions, learning languages well, and being curious, and not stopping them from exploring all these new things which are coming in is, I think, the most important thing that both us and schools can do. And I think one final thing I would say is also, I think it's important that the time has come to start training children how to work safely with AI. Much like we used to do that for social networks and it didn't work, frankly, but we kind of train kids for to detect sexual predators, for example, or other dangers. I think how to kind of detect fake news. What are the possibilities? The way you could be actually scammed. It's not your mom's voice. If there's a call from your mom saying something, just call your mom back. Okay, things like that. So I think both sides, and those things are important.
Right. We touched some of this last time when we talked about deepfakes and democracy, but deepfakes and society, deepfakes and really the children, for example, that itself is probably a full-blown topic in that sense, right? Picking up on Q with what you talked about, saying that how, the CEO of Nvidia really was talking about the fact that we can now converse in a language. You don't need to go learn a language, right? But there's a very interesting question here by Kabir. He's saying that what is the perspective on the future of developers and how their community is going to get impacted? Because
No, that's a good one, right? I think I talk about the fact that the irony of Gen AI is that it's first going after its creators.
yeah,
Okay. And the creators obviously were the
I
software
mean,
engineers.
you should be calling this phrase Prometheus, right? I mean, happening, right, in a way. Uh,
Absolutely. See, I'll be very honest with you, Kabir. I'm not a great or even a not great software engineer or a programmer. Okay, and but what I do know is this: that programming is not about the language. It's about how you think.
yeah,
Okay, the best programmers, the 10x programmers, don't type faster. Okay, they find out they do elegant software programs which require minimum effort for maximum output, and that logical, elegant, creative thinking. Programming is fun not because of the semicolons or the brackets you have to type. Okay, but how you kind of think and outdo someone by just making shorter programs which can do far more, and those become legendary in that sense. And so I think what will happen is that the developer community, the people who actually think better, okay, and who kind of use their brains and therefore make better logic algorithms in that sense, are going to continue to win. The only thing is that software programming, as we go further, if Jensen Huang and the others are right, will get democratized, and everyone can become a quote unquote programmer because you don't need to learn the brackets and the semicolons. But still, the best thinkers will. So I don't see a threat to people who are good programmers. Like in every other job, I see threat to people who are pedestrian in what they do.
right. So before we move to the next question, I just kind of, I just had to bring this up. There was a
Please.
lovely quote in your WhatsApp community, I think by one Atul Batra, to the question that, he said, who's not going to get fired? And I think he said that AI can't take over my job because AI will always be my job, right? So, any thoughts on that? Do you think there will be any unfireable jobs out there?
Well, Atul is an amazing guy. He is actually a deeply knowledgeable person in AI in Bangalore, has worked in AI and analytics for a very long time, very senior person. And he was right. I mean, he said, my job will always be AI. I mean, absolutely, there will be unfireable jobs. Okay. Well, for one, the people who make the chips, since we started from the chips, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, fabs and chips and the basic infrastructure behind AI, absolutely unfireable. As I said, jobs which are focused on human traits like compassion and, well, construction. And I don't know if you saw one of the memes. Well, a real ad actually was an advertisement, and it was on a half finished building, and it had this big hoarding right outside the building, which had like a prompt to ChatGPT, please complete this building. Done building. And obviously ChatGPT couldn't. And below that, there was that, construction workers wanted, or, managers wanted, etc. And so I think that will always be there. And there'll be multiple jobs which are not going to get taken away. Atul Batra's being one of them.
Well said. There's a nice question here from Desmond, and I think that we could probably move to that part of the discussion now. He's really saying that, look, AI also raises questions about ethics and fairness. How do you really navigate discussions about the ethical implications of AI-related job displacement and its broader societal impact?
Yeah. We'll have probably a series of discussions. Sorry, what was the name of the guy, Vivek?
Desmond Haynes.
Desmond. I count it more as Desmond G, that guys who make the tequila here. But anyway.
Right.
Desmond, we will have a series of discussions on various ethical implications of AI, and because it's a massive topic.
Right.
Job displacement to me is not as much an ethical implication as a societal. I don't think there's an ethics involved. I mean, no one owes anyone a job. Let's be very honest. Okay, it's not that a job is a birthright of every individual, as clean air, water, or truth, or the deeper things that are out there. Jobs need to be earned. Okay, you're not given a job, and the world changes, technologies change, societies change, countries change, economic situations change, and as human beings, we need to adapt to them, and change our skills, change the way what we work, etc. I mean, Darwin said it so many years back, saying that it's not the strongest of the species, but the most adaptable which survive. And the reason we human beings not only survive, but became like the apex, okay, of the species is not because we were the strongest, we were puny, but because we could, survive through and adapt through, and therefore survive and thrive through multiple changes which have happened every century, sometimes every decade. I mean, there were epidemics which killed 40% of us. The AI thing is nothing compared to the great cholera epidemic. I'm saying all this just because sometimes we make a big deal out of stuff, and sometimes we feel entitled that nothing should happen to us. The world doesn't act that way. It's a tough world. Okay, it's a tough life, but we are, as a species, are amazingly good at adapting and creating opportunities for ourselves, and we'll have to continue doing that. It's not an ethical issue; it's a societal issue.
I think that's a great point. By the way, this was just reminding me when we were talking about the whole thing about pandemics and everything. There was this lovely quote by Ashish Hemrajani of Book My Show. He was a junior at JWT, and he mentioned that, listen, I mean, people are talking about unicorns. My philosophy is to be a cockroach. Because the dinosaurs and those never survive, right? But the cockroach can always creep in, hide inside, even come through a nuclear holocaust and come out, right? I mean, I think we have to probably have the survival instincts of a cockroach, right? In terms of adapting out there, right? But coming back to this, I was just wondering that I agree with you that, and your point is absolutely, you're absolutely on point when you talk about the fact that these are not ethical issues or societal issues. But do you think that this could probably push the government to kind of take them up as, if you see large level of job displacements, I mean, probably people suddenly won't be in love with capitalism as it is, because, suddenly there will be the sense of entitlement. If you look at a 25% employment over a period of 3-4 years is what led to the rise of the Nazis, before the pre-World War II, right? Do you see any of that possibility happening, or we think we just kind of tide over this,
Capitalism and its demise seems to be one of your favorite topics, Vivek, isn't it? And its rumored demise, let me say that way. Look, yes, joblessness in society is a massive, massive problem. Any society. It is usually the precursor to huge revolutions, regime changes, unrest, wars, most kinds of disturbance. My submission, however, is that AI will not do that. The job. I think climate change, for example, will lead to much greater job displacement than AI would in the short to medium term. I think because of climate change, so many shifting agricultural trends, shifting industry, shifting mineral trends is going to lead to massive, massive job destruction and job displacement. I think the wars which are happening, or the polarization of society that is happening, to me, is a bigger threat than AI and jobs. Sure, AI will impact jobs, but it will take time. If I may say another provocative thing, Vivek, I think a lot of companies which are laying off people saying that they are replacing it by AI are bullshit. Okay, I think that they're killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
Becoming more efficient by laying off people, and the stock market is rewarding them because supposedly they're doing AI inside. Okay,
right. Virtue signaling all over. Yeah.
Not happening. Elon Musk showed all the tech companies that you can work with 20% of your workforce. And so everyone is like, oh, wow, discovered fat in their system. And now suddenly you've got this white knight AI whom you can
Right.
blame things on and, shed people. So it's not AI creating those disturbances, in my opinion. When we reach that era, sure, but I think your demise of capitalism, etc., will come before that because of
Right.
other reasons. Climate change being the number one, rather than AI.
Yeah. Now, I love capitalism. You're just kind of wondering whether it's under threat. You know,
I'm just provoking.
yeah. So this brings me to another ethical question that that actually Bill Gates posed many years back, and to his credit, this was probably 15 years back. Before we saw any of this happening, and he talked about saying, yeah, absolutely. He talked about with robots and algorithms and AI replacing people. Should society be looking at taxing them? And I thought that was a very interesting, provocative question.
Bill Gates has said many, many wise things.
Yeah.
We sometimes underestimate his wisdom because we think of him as the money-making capitalist who kind of destroyed open source and small companies or whatever.
Right. He was a poster boy, right, for people to take pot shots at that time. I mean, now you probably have, a few dozen techs he used to talk about, but that time he was probably the...
For example, one of the things he said was we should have charged 1 cent for every email. There would have been no spam. There would have been no DDoS virus attacks or whatever. Okay?
Right.
And we never did that. We made email free, and 99% of email that comes to us is actually stopped before it comes to us because it's spam. So you can imagine the volume and then the sheer amount of data center related issues that it causes. Of late, he said also a couple of very wise things, which we will sometime talk later about how AI is the new UI and agents, but that's today not for topic. And yes, he also talked about, the robot tax, and basically that if robots become factors of production, okay, much like human beings or capital or land, they should be taxed. And I again, I'm not an economist who can kind of go into this with any scholarship, but I think it's definitely a idea worth considering and worth talking about.
And I think coming towards the end of this discussion, Jaspreet, there's a lot of talk about this whole thing, in the scenario that the world is taken over by AIs or whatever, right? We don't know whether that's happening, but people have talked about the universal basic income. That's been touched upon by many thinkers, on both sides of the fence again. It makes me think that, look, if eventually man gets reduced to maybe doing 2 hours of work a day, or if not, no work, right? Getting money, via the UBI, what would it mean to be a human, without the sense of purpose and everything, that sounds very...
So, UBI and universal basic income, as you know, is the utopian ideal, which a lot of tech bros and the PA guys, the effective altruists, talk about as saying that, look, AI is great. It's going to do all our work. We are going to sit around and have fun. And the the value which is produced because of AI, the GDPs, etc., is going to be distributed amongst human beings as universal basic income. I think that's good. Okay. I completely agree. And I think there have been studies which have been done. Okay, again, I can't quote the studies, but there are studies which have been done saying that, there were a set of people who were told to do work and given money, and set of people who didn't do any work but were given the same money. Okay, and the second set became extremely frustrated, had mental health issues, got into bad habits, addictions, etc. Because I don't think human beings live or work for money alone. We know that. They work for human connection, they work for purpose, they work for fulfillment. And getting money without any of that, well, getting money is great, but getting lots of money is even better. But, it has to be because of something you did, because of a certain impact that you made. And
it has to be a byproduct, not the end itself.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, I personally don't think UBI without that. Maybe there's UBI with that, but UBI without that, I think is not a good idea.
No, great, Jaspreet. As always, this was a fantastic 40-45 minutes spent with you. Really, had some very interesting takeaways. Look forward to having you back next week, and we'll probably pick up one of these topics and double down that. But have a great evening and see you soon.
Lovely. Great talking to you. And I hope the listeners enjoyed themselves as much as we did. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.